The night enveloped the land, with cool moonlight pouring down from the sky. It passed through the colossal protective array that shielded the Tao sect, like a veil draped over the many mountain ranges below. Inside a quiet room, a young figure sat cross-legged in deep concentration. His hands continuously formed a peculiar set of hand seals. As the seals took shape, faint but distinct waves of energy shot out from between his hands. Sigh. Lin Dong completed 3 seals before rubbing his forehead and pausing. The stasis power of the stasis tablet was truly exhausting. Even with his abilities as a 4-seal symbol master, he could only manage 3 consecutive activations before feeling depleted. He couldn't even fathom the kind of mind-boggling energy consumption that the legendary Stasis Divine Tablet would require. Any ordinary cultivator would likely vanish in an instant if they attempted to use it. Looks like I need to find a way to increase my spiritual energy, Lin Dong pondered. His primordial energy had already reached the 6th nirvana stage, but his spiritual energy was still at the level of a 5-seal symbol master. This imbalance in his cultivation needed to be addressed. It was clear that he had to devote more time and effort to enhancing his spiritual energy. Buzz. As Lin Dong prepared to close his eyes and focus on cultivating his spiritual energy, a faint ripple suddenly stirred within his body. In the next moment, a streak of golden light shot out from within him, unfolding into a golden phantom in front of him. Little Mink? Staring at the golden figure, Lin Dong was momentarily stunned. The phantom resembled Little Mink, and the golden light was from the demon spirit brand that Little Mink had left behind before departing. However, the brand had remained dormant for so long that Lin Dong had almost forgotten about it. Hey, how's life at the Tao sect? Nobody's been bullying you, right? Little Mink's figure was blurry, but the mischievous smile and that devilishly handsome face were unmistakable. His familiar voice filled the room. Finally decided to contact me, huh? Lin Dong shot him a glare. Ever since Little Mink and Little Yin left, Lin Dong hadn't received any word from them. Hee. I've been busy helping Little Yin find ways to improve his strength. I've heard a bit about what you've been up to. Seems like you're doing pretty well at the Tao sect. Little Mink chuckled. Not bad. Lin Dong smiled, but then he narrowed his eyes and asked, You didn't use the demon spirit brand just to chat, did you? Little Mink let out a sly laugh, but his expression quickly turned serious. Little Yan's been injured. The smile on Lin Dong's face faded, and his eyes darkened like gathering storm clouds. What happened? A few days ago, while I was away, that guy broke into a place and found something valuable, but he was injured by a powerful guardian stationed there. Fortunately, his body's tough, so he's recovered quite a bit over the past couple of days. A chilling light flickered in Little Mink's long, narrow eyes. What are you planning to do? Lin Dong asked calmly, his eyes narrowing slightly. What else? We can't just let them off after hurting Little Yin. Little Mink grinned wickedly. Can't you handle it? Lin Dong asked softly. If Little Mink could deal with the situation easily, he wouldn't have come to him. Given Little Mink's temperament, he would have acted long ago. Although my strength has been steadily recovering, I'm still not at my peak. Besides, the opponent this time is tricky. They've got the advantage of natural terrain, plus they use some special techniques. I've tried, but it wasn't enough, Little Mink admitted. You want me to come? Lin Dong asked. He was no longer the same inexperienced disciple who had just entered the Tao sect. His strength, which rivaled the 9th nirvana stage, gave him the confidence to roam freely in the Eastern Mystery region. Yeah. Little Mink didn't beat around the bush and nodded. He continued, The thing Little Yin found will be extremely beneficial to you too. Hee. Why let good fortune fall into someone else's hands? After a brief pause, Little Mink grinned slyly and added, By the way, if you do come, you'll need to bring something with you. Only with that item will I be able to break their special techniques. What item? Lin Dong asked, puzzled. The Heaven Hall of the Tao sect has a pure primordial treasure called the Heavenly Phoenix Zither. If you can borrow it, I'll be able to counter their techniques. A pure primordial treasure. The Heavenly Phoenix Zither. Lin Dong's face darkened as he spoke, exasperated. Pure primordial treasures aren't ordinary items. In a super sect, They're considered supreme treasures. How am I, a mere disciple, supposed to borrow it so easily? Well, just do your best. If it doesn't work out, I'll figure something else out. But if you can borrow the heavenly phoenix zither, head to the 10,000 Beast Mountain range. Once you arrive, you can use the demon spirit brand to sense our location, little Mink said, a bit helpless himself. All right. Lin Dong nodded, rubbing his temples in frustration. The golden phantom flickered for a moment before gradually fading away. The heavenly phoenix zither. Staring at the spot where the golden light had disappeared, Lin Dong couldn't help but massage his forehead. A pure primordial treasure wasn't something to be taken lightly. Should he ask Chile, the master of Heaven Hall? But what if they refused outright? And if he ended up losing the heavenly phoenix zither, wouldn't Heaven Hall suffer a massive loss? Even someone as powerful as EngSubs wouldn't interfere in matters related to treasures of this level, let alone a regular disciple. Looks like I'll have to ask Huanhuan for help. After much thought, Lin Dong realized that the only person he could turn to was Huanhuan. However, she had been avoiding him lately, throwing a bit of a tantrum after not finding him at Wild Hall when she visited. She hadn't shown her face in days, likely still upset. Lin Dong wasn't sure if she'd help him now, or just give him the cold shoulder. But since little Mink had stressed the importance of the situation, Lin Dong figured that the opponent must be formidable. Even if it meant facing Huanhuan's wrath, he had no choice but to try. The next day, Lin Dong's expression was somewhat awkward when he appeared in front of Huanhuan. Seeing him, Huanhuan's face remained stern. Many disciples of Heaven Hall were nearby, casting curious glances at the two of them, as they were both well-known figures within the Dao sect. Oh, so the busy man finally has some free time? Huanhuan glanced at him with her large eyes, her tone indifferent. Lin Dong cleared his throat, thinking about how unusually angry she seemed. But since he needed her help, he had to tread carefully. I was recovering before, you know? You saw how badly senior brother Wang Yin injured me. Now that I'm healed, I came to find you right away. As soon as he finished the sentence, Lin Dong felt his face heat up, knowing full well how forced those words sounded. It was the first time he'd spoken so insincerely to a girl, but remembering little Mink's request, he gritted his teeth and endured. Huanhuan blushed slightly at his words, but quickly shot him a huge glare. Next time you try to talk to a girl, can you at least hide how reluctant you are? There's no shortage of people waiting to talk to me, you know? You're not that special. Even with Lin Dong's thick skin, he couldn't help but flush with embarrassment. To be teased like this by a little girl was really something else. All right, out with it. What do you want? Huanhuan observed the fluctuating expressions on Lin Dong's face, a sly glimmer flickering in her bright eyes. She knew that the pride of the man standing before her, now one of the most respected figures in the Dao sect, was likely nearing its breaking point. With a quick shift in tone, she spoke. Hearing her words, Lin Dong sighed helplessly. Clearly, this clever girl had already seen through his ulterior motive for seeking her out, and all the banter earlier had been part of her little act. Lin Dong glanced around, and then stepped closer to Huanhuan, catching the faint fragrance wafting from her. I need a favor. Think you can help me borrow something? Borrow what? Huanhuan asked, her eyebrows knitting slightly in confusion. Under the scrutiny of her bright, clear eyes that seemed to shimmer with curiosity, Lin Dong forced a bitter smile before finally blurting out what he came for. Could you lend me the heavenly phoenix zither from Heaven Hall for a few days? When Lin Dong made his request, he couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed, especially when he saw the look of surprise appear on the girl's pretty face. His embarrassment deepened. You want to borrow the heavenly phoenix zither? Huanhuan's delicate eyebrows shot up in surprise. Lin Dong's request had clearly caught her off guard. After all, she was well aware of how precious a pure primordial treasure was. Even the disciples of Heaven Hall rarely saw it, let alone borrowed it. And now Lin Dong wanted to take it out? If anyone else had asked her this, she would have probably responded with, "You must be dreaming." Yeah. Lin Dong nodded, bracing himself under the weight of her curious and slightly skeptical gaze. Seeing her eyebrows still furrowed, he added with a bitter smile, I really need that item right now. Uncle Chile would never agree to it. The heavenly phoenix zither is a treasure of Heaven Hall. Even elders in the sect have trouble borrowing it, let alone a disciple. Huanhuan frowned in thought before replying. That's why I had no choice but to come to you. Lin Dong said awkwardly. You want me to help you pull some strings? Her charming face tilted slightly, the sunlight catching her features in a soft, honeyed glow, making her look even more captivating. But why should I be so nice to you? She brushed a strand of hair aside and smiled sweetly, feigning innocence. Faced with her quick wit, Lin Dong felt completely at a loss. He could only respond helplessly. Didn't I help your sister reclaim command? I earned some credit for that, didn't I? Huanhuan seriously considered this for a moment before nodding slightly. Then, with a casual shrug, she said, but some rude person had such poor manners during the hall competition, so that bit of credit only makes me overlook your behavior back then. With little Yan's situation weighing heavily on his mind, and now being teased by Huanhuan, Lin Dong felt a flicker of frustration rise within him. He frowned, tempted to snap at her, but in the end, he forced himself to suppress his irritation. After all, Huanhuan didn't owe him anything, and his request was no small matter. Maybe he was asking too much. Feeling a bit disheartened, Lin Dong began to think he would have to figure this out on his own. Hey, you're not upset, are you? Noticing the change in his expression, the playful tone in Huanhuan's voice softened as she cautiously asked. No. Lin Dong gave a wry smile, shaking his head. Forget it. I won't trouble you with this anymore. I'll find another way. I never said I wouldn't help you, but judging by your expression, it seems like you don't care at all. Big man. Yet every word you say is the opposite of what you mean, she muttered, her large eyes stealing a glance at his face. You have a way? Lin Dong asked, raising an eyebrow. Huanhuan's dark eyes glinted mischievously as she waved for Lin Dong to follow her. Come with me, she said, before turning around and flitting away like a butterfly. Lin Dong hesitated for a moment, but quickly followed. They moved swiftly through the vast Heaven Hall. After 10 minutes or so, they reached the deepest part of the hall, where the defenses were noticeably tighter. However, with Huanhuan leading the way, they encountered no resistance. We're here, Huanhuan announced, stopping in front of a grand hall. A dome of light shielded the hall, its protective barrier forming a bowl-like structure over the building. Lin Dong inspected the barrier and could sense an incredibly powerful energy emanating from it. This must be one of Heaven Hall's most secure areas, given the level of protection in place. With a flick of her wrist, Huanhuan produced a white jade token from her palm. As soon as the token touched the barrier, ripples spread across the surface, and a light gate formed. Let's go, she said, carefully glancing around before stepping through the barrier and pushing open the heavy doors of the hall. Lin Dong followed closely behind. The hall was vast, with towering columns adorned with intricate runes. The entire space felt like part of a massive formation. Lin Dong's eyes swept across the hall, but they quickly locked onto the center, where a jade pillar stood. Atop the pillar was a fire-red ancient zither. The zither was engraved with the image of a phoenix spreading its wings. From a distance, the wings seemed to flutter like flames. An overwhelming aura emanated from the zither, warping the space around it ever so slightly. Is that the heavenly phoenix zither? Lin Dong's gaze was fixed on the fiery red zither, and his eyes gleamed with undisguised excitement. The sheer power radiating from it could only belong to a treasure of such caliber. Yep, Huanhuan confirmed with a nod and a grin. We'll just sneak it out for a bit and return it once we're done. Sneak it out? Lin Dong was startled. Did you really think you could ask Uncle Chile to lend it to you? No way. Even if you got my father to plead on your behalf, it still wouldn't happen. Huanhuan rolled her eyes at Lin Dong, then waved her hand dismissively. Don't worry, I'll take responsibility if anything happens. We don't need someone throwing a fit for no reason. Lin Dong could only offer an awkward smile, scratching his head before replying sincerely, thanks. No need for that, Huanhuan chuckled, looking every bit like a sly little fox. Lin Dong, usually so calm and composed, had shown her more helpless expressions today than ever before. As she laughed, Huanhuan tilted her head slightly, her bright, beautiful eyes locking onto Lin Dong. She smiled and said, "By the way, my sister asked me to tell you that when you volunteered to give up command that day, she thought you were incredibly cool. I'm not good at that sort of thing. If I had kept the role, my poor leadership would have only made things worse for the other disciples. Senior Sister Xiao Xiao is much more capable than I am, so naturally, the position belonged to her," Lin Dong replied with a smile. Huanhuan pursed her lips into a smile, then suddenly formed a hand seal with her slender fingers. The heavenly phoenix zither on the stone pillar gently floated down, landing softly in her arms. "Let's go, and make it quick," Huanhuan said with a grin, holding the zither. You're coming too?" Lin Dong asked, surprised at her sudden declaration. "Though I'm not sure what exactly you need the heavenly phoenix zither for, you should know that its next owner is me. So, only I can control it, unless someone is powerful enough to erase the mark my father left on it," Huanhuan explained with a playful smile, holding the zither close. Lin Dong was speechless. With little Mink's current strength, erasing the mark left by Xuanzi was out of the question. "Any other questions?" Huanhuan asked with a teasing smile, tilting her head as she watched Lin Dong, who had already been humbled several times in front of her today. "No more?" Lin Dong hesitated, but eventually nodded with a bitter smile. He turned and walked out of the hall, while Huanhuan watched his retreating back, her bright eyes flickering with a trace of mischief as she leisurely followed behind him. Once the two left, the hall became silent once again. A few minutes later, on one of the stone pillars, space distorted slightly, and two figures gradually materialized. They were none other than Xuanzi and Heaven Hall Master Qi Lei. "This girl," Qi Lei muttered, glancing at the now empty stone pillar. His face twitched before he finally couldn't help but say, "Master, are we really going to let those two juniors just take the heavenly phoenix zither out of the Dao sect? Don't worry, let the younger generation gain some confidence. Consider it part of their training. Besides, there's a mark on the heavenly phoenix zither. If anything serious happens, I'll be able to sense it," Xuanzi replied with a calm smile. Hearing this, Qi Lei could only nod in agreement, though he couldn't help but smile wryly. "That girl, Huanhuan, she's a disciple of Heaven Hall, and yet she's helping Lin Dong steal our own treasure. What kind of logic is that? This girl?" Xuanzi chuckled softly but didn't comment further. With a wave of his sleeve, the two figures slowly disappeared from the stone pillar once again. At the edge of the Dao sect's protective barrier, a ripple spread through the air as two figures emerged, moving stealthily. "Hee, we really made it out without being noticed," Huanhuan said with a bright smile, hugging the fiery heavenly phoenix zither as she looked around excitedly. Unlike her optimism, Lin Dong frowned slightly. His cautious nature made it hard for him to believe they had actually managed to sneak such a precious pure primordial treasure out of the heavily guarded Dao sect without anyone noticing. Could all the old experts of the sect really have been asleep? But of course, it was unlikely that those elders had been unaware. Lin Dong suspected they had been allowed to leave without interference, no doubt because of Huanhuan's status and, more importantly, the unseen hand of Xuanzi. With a quiet sigh of relief, Lin Dong turned and respectfully bowed toward the Dao sect. Huanhuan, seeing his gesture, blinked in surprise before sticking out her tongue, realizing what was going on. After Lin Dong finished his bow, he straightened up and turned back. His body trembled slightly, and with a flutter of his azure dragon wings, a gust of wind swirled around him. "Come here," Lin Dong said, extending his arms toward Huanhuan. "What are you doing?" she asked, confused, as she approached him with the zither in her arms. Her eyes widened in alarm when she saw Lin Dong wrap his arms around her slender waist. Huanhuan was startled by his sudden action. It wasn't until she felt his breath near her that she snapped out of it. Flustered, she quickly raised the heavenly phoenix zither to shield herself, her face turning red as she glared at him. "I can fly faster this way. Dao sect is quite far from the 10,000 Beast Mountain range," Lin Dong said with a sigh, glancing at the embarrassed girl in front of him. Huanhuan stared at him, trying to discern whether he had any inappropriate intentions. But seeing only the exasperation in his eyes, she relaxed a little. "If you dare try anything funny, I'll take the zither and head straight back to Dao sect," Huanhuan muttered under her breath. "Don't worry, I'm not interested in a little girl like you," Lin Dong retorted with a helpless look, rolling his eyes before lifting her up and leaping into the air. With a powerful beat of his azure dragon wings, they shot forward like a streak of light. "Hey, who are you calling a little girl?" Huanhuan's indignant voice echoed through the sky as they sped away. The 10,000 Beast Mountain Range lay in the southwestern region of the Eastern Mystery Region, about half a month's journey from the Dao sect. However, with Lin Dong's current speed, the distance was greatly reduced. In less than a week, the vast mountain range appeared on the horizon. As its name suggested, the 10,000 Beast Mountain Range was a gathering place for countless beasts. While the number of beasts in the Eastern Mystery Region wasn't as overwhelming as in the Demon Domain, powerful beasts still roamed various parts of the region. The 10,000 Beast Mountain Range was one of the most notable places for such creatures. Rumor had it that even beasts who had reached the life mystique stage lived there. Such beings could transform into human form, and their intelligence was on par with humans, making them dangerous foes to encounter. As Lin Dong approached the vast mountain range, he could feel the demon spirit brand that little Mink had left inside him beginning to stir. Whoosh! Following the direction indicated by the brand, Lin Dong beat his dragon wings and darted through the sky. After about 10 minutes, his eyes sharpened as he spotted two familiar figures on a distant mountain peak. Big Brother! Before Lin Dong could even land, one of the figures, an imposing man built like a tower of iron, stood up excitedly. His deep, booming voice rang out like thunder across the distance. Lin Dong landed on the mountain peak, releasing Huanhuan from his grasp. He looked ahead, where two figures stood. The man on the left wore a green robe, his face devilishly handsome. Even from a distance, Lin Dong could recognize the lazy expression that still lingered on his face. However, beneath that familiar indolence, Lin Dong could detect a trace of joy in his eyes. Beside little Mink stood the towering figure of little Yin, whose massive frame was covered in numerous crisscrossing scars, giving him a fierce and menacing aura. These marks seemed to add a wild, savage energy to him. If he could only restrain the silly grin that appeared when he saw Lin Dong, he would undoubtedly appear as a truly intimidating figure. "Yo, not bad. You've improved quite a bit. Looks like your time in the Dao sect hasn't been wasted," little Mink remarked, his gaze sweeping over Lin Dong, raising an eyebrow with a playful smile. Lin Dong walked forward, but ignored little Mink's teasing, instead directing his attention toward little Yin. His eyes widened in surprise as he sensed that little Yan's strength had reached a level comparable to an 8th Nirvana stage expert. "Hee, with Lord Mink personally training him, of course, he wouldn't be weaker than you." Little Mink laughed proudly when he noticed Lin Dong's astonishment, his usual mischievous tone still present. "Not bad." Lin Dong patted little Yan's arm, nodding with satisfaction. It seemed that letting little Yin follow little Mink had been the right decision. Had he stayed in the Dao sect, he probably wouldn't have reached this level. "Second brother helped me a lot. He took me to many places," little Yin said, scratching his head sheepishly. Despite being a fierce fighter known for his brutal combat methods, in front of Lin Dong, he was as docile as a lamb. Seeing this, little Mink couldn't help but cover his face and sigh, feeling somewhat disgruntled. Although little Yin always listened to him, he was never as obedient as he was with Lin Dong. Lin Dong chuckled, then turned his attention to little Mink and asked, "How's your strength recovery going?" "I should be able to handle someone at the great completion of the life mystique stage," little Mink said nonchalantly, a smirk forming on his devilishly handsome face. "The great completion of the life mystique stage, huh?" Lin Dong nodded slightly. That was the same level as Uncle Master Chunjun, indicating that little Mink's strength had indeed made significant progress. "What's with that girl? How did you manage to rope her in? I remember she wasn't exactly fond of you," little Mink asked, his gaze shifting to Huanhuan, who stood a short distance away. She seemed startled by the stark contrast between little Mink and little Yin, given their size difference. Seeing this, Lin Dong couldn't help but smile. Normally, This girl acted fearless in the Dao sect, but outside, it seemed she had grown timid. Lindong called Huanhuan over and made quick introductions. When little Mink found out that she was the Dao sect leader's daughter, a flicker of surprise crossed his face. He hadn't expected such a background. It's thanks to her that we managed to bring the heavenly phoenix zither. Otherwise, it would have been impossible, Lindong said, shrugging his shoulders. Hee, it looks like she's quite fond of you, little Mink teased with a grin. At that, Huanhuan's cheeks turned a shade of red, but she quickly flashed a sweet, innocent smile at little Mink, looking as pure as could be. Lindong, on the other hand, rolled his eyes. Who was she trying to fool with that act? Bringing the heavenly phoenix zither is great. It'll save us a lot of trouble. Those damned yellow-furred beasts are going to regret it once I break their heavenly sound formation. Little Mink rubbed his hands together in excitement. Explain the situation first, and what exactly did little Yin find? Lindong gave him a sideways glance and asked, Don't worry. The thing he found is definitely worth the trip. What is it? Lindong raised an eyebrow. Little Mink's eyes flashed with a hint of mystery as he lowered his voice and whispered into Lindong's ear. Earth Core Spirit Nectar. The moment those 5 words landed, Lindong's pupils contracted sharply. Even Huanhuan let out a soft gasp of surprise. Earth Core Spirit Nectar? Huanhuan's delicate face showed a hint of astonishment as she softly repeated the words. In this world, there were countless heavenly treasures, each born from the natural energy of heaven and earth, possessing miraculous powers. The so-called Earth Core Spirit Nectar not only enhanced one's strength but, more importantly, it could help a person begin to condense their essence spirit, a remarkable power. To condense the essence spirit was a feat only achievable by those who had reached the peak of the 9th nirvana stage. At that point, the power of the essence spirit within their body would grow stronger. However, even at that level, many cultivators would be unable to fully condense an essence spirit without extraordinary fortune. Most people could only wait until they broke through to the life mystique stage, when their primordial energy would merge with the mysterious essence of life, to successfully condense their essence spirit. But with the Earth Core Spirit Nectar, all those complicated steps could be drastically shortened. The sheer power of this treasure didn't need further explanation. If news of it spread, it would surely attract countless experts on the brink of entering the life mystique stage, as the temptation of condensing an essence spirit was simply too great for them to resist. Only with a fully formed essence spirit could one break free from the constraints of their physical body. Even if their body were destroyed in battle, they wouldn't vanish instantly. With enough resources and connections, rebuilding a new body and returning to life wouldn't be impossible. You actually found such a thing? Even with Lindong's usual composure, he couldn't help but narrow his eyes and murmur to himself. He had personally experienced the might of essence spirit power. His dragon spirit will had been formed by such power, and with its strength, he had defeated formidable opponents like Yao Ling and Wang Yin, who were incredibly difficult to deal with. However, despite knowing how powerful essence spirit energy was, Lindong himself hadn't yet developed it. Only upon reaching the 7th nirvana stage could a cultivator begin to generate a small amount of essence spirit power within their body, and Lindong was still one step away from that stage. As for fully condensing his essence spirit, that was a far-off goal, at least until now. The appearance of the Earth Core Spirit Nectar brought that once far-fetched idea closer to reality. Hee, interested? Little Mink asked, a smug grin on his face as he looked at the lingering astonishment in Lindong's eyes. Such treasures were not something one encountered easily. Lindong smiled faintly and then nodded firmly. The sect competition was approaching soon, and he needed to do everything he could to improve his strength before then. From Xuanzi's words, Lindong could sense just how powerful the Yuan sect disciples were. The so-called 3 minor kings, personally trained by the Yuan sect's 3 leaders, would undoubtedly be formidable opponents. Though Lindong hadn't shown it outwardly, he did feel some pressure. After all, the Yuan sect had both the advantage in numbers and in talent. On the Dao sect side, among the younger generation, only Lindong, EngSubs, and Wang Yin could barely rival them. This opportunity of the Earth Core Spirit Nectar landing right in his lap was something Lin Dong absolutely couldn't afford to pass up. What's guarding the Earth Core Spirit Nectar? Lin Dong asked. In this region of the 10,000 Beast Mountain range, there's a ruler guarding it. It's also a demonic beast, with its true form being a golden ghost owl. Its strength is at the minor completion of the life mystique stage. Under its command, there are a number of other beasts. The strongest of its generals are two beasts with strength comparable to the 9th Nirvana stage, little Mink explained while stroking his chin. A golden ghost owl, minor completion of the life mystique stage. Lin Dong muttered, slightly taken aback. With that level of strength, it doesn't seem like too much of a challenge for you, right? Little Mink had regained enough strength to rival experts at the great completion of the life mystique stage. So why couldn't he handle a beast only at the minor completion level? I told you, the guy has some special techniques, little Mink said helplessly. Ghost owls. Is it the owl sound formation? No wonder you need the heavenly phoenix zither. Huanhuan interjected softly, her eyes gleaming with understanding. Little Mink glanced at her in surprise, clearly not expecting her to figure it out so quickly just from the mention of the ghost owls. Yes. That golden ghost owl has spent a lot of effort cultivating a force of 100,000 ghost owl beasts. These beasts specialize in soundwave attacks. With the natural terrain of demonic sound mountain, they've created the owl sound formation, or the heavenly sound formation as it's also known. It's incredibly powerful. Even I can't break through it, little Mink confirmed with a nod. 100,000. Lin Dong was stunned by the sheer number. The golden ghost owl had clearly invested heavily into this formation. No wonder it ruled over the 10,000 Beast Mountain range. Little Yin was training in this mountain range when the owl sound formation briefly deactivated. He accidentally stumbled upon the Earth Core Spirit Nectar hidden in demonic sound mountain, little Mink continued. But the golden ghost owl caught him. That damned owl was merciless, and even though its strength far exceeded little Yan's, it still brought over a dozen underlings to toy with him. In the end, it broke more than 10 of his bones. If I hadn't arrived in time, this fool would have been roasted alive. Little Mink's eyes flashed with a dangerous light as he glared at little Yin. He grumbled, useless brute. Little Yin scratched his head, giving Lin Dong a sheepish grin. But Lin Dong noticed a flicker of ferocity deep within his eyes, something not present before. They really hit you that hard, huh? Lin Dong patted little Yin on the arm, a bright smile spreading across his face. Huanhuan glanced at him, realizing that this smile meant Lin Dong was genuinely angry now. So, how do we handle this? Little Mink asked, looking at Lin Dong. Handle what? Lin Dong raised an eyebrow and then clapped his hands, saying, "We'll raise demonic sound mountain to the ground." As those words left his mouth, the suppressed ferocity within Lin Dong finally erupted. The violent aura he unleashed was far more intense than that of Wang Yin, his previous rival. That's what I was waiting to hear. Little Mink's lips curled into a devilish grin, his handsome face now exuding a demonic air. Beside him, little Yin also grinned, but the menacing aura radiating from his towering frame was anything but friendly. The sight of him now was enough to send chills down anyone's spine. Huanhuan watched the three of them, thinking to herself, these three are truly brothers. Their ruthless attitudes are exactly the same. I'll take care of the owl sound formation, Huanhuan said, gently stroking the strings of the fiery, heavenly phoenix zither that had appeared in her hands. The instrument radiated a powerful energy, and even little Mink couldn't help but cast a glance at it. The girl smiled sweetly at Lin Dong. Are you sure you can handle it? Lin Dong asked, concerned. Huanhuan's strength was at the 8th Nirvana stage, but even little Mink had trouble with the owl sound formation. Everything has its counter. That formation may be powerful, but my heavenly phoenix zither is its natural bane, Huanhuan replied confidently. Heh, bold girl. She's about the same age as Su Ro, but her personality is much stronger, little Mink said with a chuckle. Su Ro? Huanhuan's eyes flickered as she glanced at Lin Dong. A friend, Lin Dong said nonchalantly, sensing something off in Huanhuan's gaze, but not paying much attention to it. He turned to little Mink and said, let's move out. "We're heading to Demonic Sound Mountain." Little Mink nodded, and without further words, his figure transformed into a stream of light that shot toward the depths of the vast mountain range. Lin Dong, Little Yin, and Huanhuan followed closely behind, the four of them cutting an imposing figure as they sped forward. Not long after Lin Dong's group set out toward the heart of the 10,000 Beast Mountain range, a sound of rushing wind could be heard from the other side of the mountains. After a short while, 3 figures flew in, moving swiftly through the sky. Leading them was an elder with long hair, dressed in a brown robe. His expression was indifferent, and though his hands were clasped behind his back, there was an unmistakable, overwhelming aura radiating from him. Behind him were 2 men dressed in black and white robes. Both were quite handsome, though their expressions carried an unmistakable air of arrogance. Judging by the powerful energy waves emanating from their bodies, it was clear they had every right to be proud. On their chests, they each wore a white badge, emblazoned with a black sun that alternated between black and white, like the shifting balance of yin and yang. This insignia marked them as disciples of Yuan's sect, the most powerful super sect in the Eastern Mystery region. The edges of their badges were adorned with golden thread, a symbol of their prestigious status. Anyone familiar with Yuan's sect's attire would recognize these badges as belonging to the elite disciples of Yuan's sect's 8 divisions. These elite disciples were also known as the 8 Spirit Generals, and both of the men before them were among that elite group. Their destination was none other than Demonic Sound Mountain.